Hi, and welcome to another video. In this clip, we're going to be looking at some basic programming tasks that you can do using the .NET framework and OpenXML. This video is particularly well suited to those who don't know much about programming, but use Word and Excel to do a variety of tasks in their day-to-day work lives. There is no prior knowledge of programming here, although I hope that you'd pick up a few tips or tricks. The bulk of this video is going to be about configuring the development environment, downloading the software that you need. Then we're going to do some very basic tasks to get you started on manipulating documents with the OpenXML framework. We'll start by downloading VS Code. VS Code is different from Visual Studio. It's the open source, very fast and very popular development environment. You can go get it at code.visualstudio.com/download and pick the operating system that you're after. It will download automatically from a link somewhere. If not, there's a link at the top. The screen may be updated or be slightly different when you do it, but once you've done that and once you've done the downloading, find the file, the VS Code user setup file, and we can run that. Now it's going to bring up a wizard. One of the things about this particular piece of software is that it actually installs it in your app data. So it's specific to a particular user. So if you're on shared computers and work and big organization environments, you can run it sort of safely in its own little bubble. I do recommend that you pick the defaults. I also recommend that you actually, if you're, again, assuming you have access on your system, to use this open with code action. It just means that you can right click on files, text files on your computer, and it'll open them with VS Code. The adding to path, well, we'll get to, this is going to require you to reboot your machine. We'll get to that at a later stage. The next thing we're going to get is the .NET framework itself. Now, when you are working with development environments and when you're doing coding and programming tasks, you'll see this acronym SDK pop up. It stands for Software Development Kit. In almost all situations, when you download an SDK, it will also have the underlying framework installed as part of it as well. So we'll go to the downloads for .NET, get the .NET SDK. Again, we're away and download. This is a little bit larger. It's about 200 megs. It'll take just a minute to download. So once we're finished, it pops up at the end and it's all done. You won't see anything happen, but when we start actually doing development, you'll see that that is installed now. The next piece of software we're going to get is Git. This is what we use for getting things up and down from GitHub. Because I'm in Windows specifically, there is a Git for Windows download. Once you have downloaded that, it'll pop up with the installer, and there's a few little gotchas on the installer for Git for Windows anyway, and I'm just going to step through some of these. So don't worry about where it's installed. Program files is fine. Don't worry about these options here. Certainly don't have it update each day. Now, there are a few gotchas, and this is one of them. Vim is, I guess, an old school text editor that people have been developing in for a long time. VS Code is what we're going to use here. We want to set that as the default. The master is the name of the current branch. We will leave that as the default. We will leave the command line and third-party software as its default. Here, we use the bundled open SSH, but this option here, if you're on Windows, use Windows's secure channel library. It just saves a little bit of drama later on, particularly if you're in an organization. Another point of drama or contention is to do with line endings. Text files in Windows are different from text files in Linux and Mac and Unix. I recommend the top option, which is that when we get stuff out of Git, we turn it into Windows style text files and then commit it, send it back as Unix style. Wholeheartedly recommend that. Also here, I recommend we use the Windows default console window for just doing anything. in regards to development, and the rest are all going to be the defaults. And once that rock and rolls, you'll have Git installed on the machine. And again, once you've gone and installed all of these, we'll then do a reboot so we can use each of them. The next piece of software we're going to get is the Open XML Software Development Kit and Productivity Tool. So in the acronym SDK means Software Development Kit. It is the standard, I guess, acronym that's used for doing development. That's when you'll see the tools that you need to do development. And usually what you'll have, as well as the tools to do development, it'll have the tools to run any particular piece of software. And so here we note that this is an open source project. It's sort of managed and run by the .NET Foundation. So we will be getting the .NET SDK. The other thing we're going to get, though, which we'll do now, is this productivity tool. This is really the key thing that we're after, because this productivity tool, it allows us to view Microsoft Word and Excel documents at a very granular level, to look at the underlying code behind them. And so we're going to download the productivity tool and also the SDK. There's two separate files here, and we're going to go through and install both of those with the default options. We're almost ready to start doing some coding. We're going to go to the command line. So the Windows key on your keyboard and push R for run, and then type CMD for command, and it'll bring up the Windows command line. Then we're going to go and type CD for change directory, C:\\, and just going to make a folder. Here we're doing a lot of testing, a lot of demos. We are building bits of code and then deleting them, then building some more, then deleting those. So we're just going to create a directory. So MD to make a directory, and I'm just going to call it just demo. And we're going to go into the demo folder, and inside this folder, I'm going to create a little subdirectory. We're going to have a few little projects in here. So the first project we're going to have, we're just going to call it first project, FP, and we're going to go into that folder there. And now we are going to open Visual Studio Code. So the command to open VS Code in the current folder is code space and then a dot. So it is going to do that, we're away, and open VS Code. Now, it's going to ask us if we trust everything in there. Yes, clearly we do, because we're the ones who created it. It's not going to have anything else. Why? Because there's nothing else in this folder. Now, VS Code by default is set up for Python and for JavaScript. Here, because we are going to be doing code using .NET, we're going to use the C#. So when you see the little pound symbol, it's pronounced sharp, as if it were a musical note. And so we do have to install this extension, and that'll wear away. So that took about 2 or 3 minutes to install. Once it's done, we really have to close the browser, the IDE, close Visual Studio Code. Then we're going to create a project and reopen it. So here, the command that we use to create a new project in .NET is .NET, which is in the command line written out as two words together. So .NET, DOTNET space, new for a new project, and then the project type. Now you can give it a name, and there's a whole bunch of options we can do here, but here we're not concerned. It's just going to give it a default name based on the folder that it's in. It's going to wear away, create a console app, and this is what we would conventionally call a hello world. Now, if we want to open Visual Studio again, code space dot, enter, it'll open VS Code. Now, when this happens, you need to wait just a second or two for VS Code to pop up and say, required assets to build and debug are missing, add them. And we go, yes. Look, it's a little bit of a gotcha, but once it does this and whirs away and does this process, you'll see this little VS Code folder has been added. All this does is to put the ability for us to debug this particular project, and it's a huge thing. And now, if you hit F5 on a Windows machine, this app is going to run. So this is literally the first app that you may have done in .NET. It's going to think about it for a second. It's building it and compiling it. It's looking at the operating system, and this is the first app we've installed on a new machine. And all this app is going to do is write to the console this text. That's it. That's very, very simple. That's your hello world. Ultimately, that's your first foray into the world of programming. Okay, this is where the fun begins. Now we're going to use ChatGPT to write us some code. So we're going to go to the project that we had just created, the little demo project, which was CD demo slash FP for first project. And again, we're going to type code space dot and then enter. That's to open VS Code to just double check, see what's in there. Okay, great. I mean, we can erase this if we want to, but it ultimately doesn't matter. We're going to paste over the top of it. Now, we are going to go to the ChatGPT home site. So that's simply chat.openai.com. If you've got an account, great, log in. If you don't, go and create one. It's free. Here, I've got the paid version here, but it's only slightly faster and has slightly better priority. Click New Chat if you've got one already open, and we are going to ask it to write some code for us. And this is the real beauty of ChatGPT when doing sort of quasi-programming tasks. It understands language very well and can trot away and try and write code for you. So I always start by the word please. I always feel that there's an aspect of politeness when getting it to write code for us. But really, essentially, the thing you need to remember is the specific language that you want written. So here we're using C Sharp. And so we're just asking it, please write some C Sharp code that, for example, we want to create some demo data. So that can be the first thing we'll do. We'll just create a CSV file, CSV comma separated value file. It's just a simple way of storing data as text. We're going to even give it the name, so it'll insert that in there. We'll call it C colon backslash demo fp dot my data dot CSV. Sure you get your little forward slashes and backslashes correctly. And we're going to give it, I guess, two. Yeah, we'll give it 2 columns. That has 2 fields in a header row called first name and last name. Then populate it with demo data, demo names. 50? Yeah, we'll go with 50. 50 demo names. 50, we'll say bogus. Yeah, all right, give it a go, see what happens. So it's going to acknowledge it if it can do it. Look, it'll think for a little bit before it trots away and starts doing the actual code itself. Sometimes it'll say, look, I don't understand. Sometimes it'll say it completely doesn't understand. Please rephrase it. Sometimes it'll go through and do this. So here, for example, it's creating random data, but ultimately it's just writing the word random.next. So it's just going to generate it as these as names with numbers in them. Maybe not that helpful. Maybe we'll try and get it to create. Please use real names. Use real names, not numbers. This is again the beauty of a conversational model. So it's going to go away, try and interpret what I've said, and then here it's going to try and insert some real names. So here we go. So it's come up with some names, a very long list. See, this bar is getting smaller. A long list of names there, of first names and last names. And it looks like this string where it's got the 2 brackets here, that means that it's an array. It's a collection of objects of the same type, and then it's going to run away and try and save that. So we'll see how that comes out. It's picking names from that array and is going to create them. Now, I will also note there that where it's got read line, that's not going to work because that's it. We're going to be running this. I'm going to copy the code now, and we're just going to try it in VS Code, see what happens. But because we're going to be running it in the debugger, we're going to have to take that one out. So let's try it to see what it does. Well, hit F5, and this is again the beauty of using ChatGPT to do these small projects. Give it a go. It may come up with an error. You may be able to see something, or it might do the thing you asked it to do. You may or may not be aware, but if you copy that text and then just go run, it's going to try and open it with the default editor. And so here, there's a list of names. It's got at the top the first name and last name. So ultimately, it has done exactly what we told it to do. It's generated a list of bogus names, and we're going to use this data for our next little project. So the next thing we're going to do is ask ChatGPT to take our data and spit out some Word documents. So here we're expressly asking it to read the same CSV file. We've explained to it what the header row is, and we're asking it to use OpenXML, which is an open source framework for building Word documents, and basically ask it to create as many as there are rows in that document and give it the name output X, where X is the the row number of that particular person. So it seems to be trotting away and doing that. And one of the wonderful things about this is that it will then go and explain to you exactly what it has done. It's quite a remarkable thing. And here, this is just a demo project. So we're going to try copying the code and we're just going to see if it runs. So to run it, we go back to our project. We open up where we were at and we just paste this in. Now, it's not going to like some parts of this. One thing that it's definitely not going to be able to do is to recognize this word processing document in this open XML. So if we hit F5 here, it'll almost certainly error because that hasn't been added into our project. Okay, we can go back to ChatGPT and say, hey, how can we install the open XML uh, package, OpenXML, document format.openxml using .NET add package. So it's going to wear away and have a think. And again, one of the wonderful things about this conversational model is it's going to look back at what you've already done. So if there's any ambiguity, it's going to try and look back at previous things you've already asked it to do. And so here, we're just going to take that, or click copy code. We go back to the command line, we paste it in, and it will install that package into our project. Just try rerunning that and see what happens. So where would it have outputted these files? Well, let's have a little look. It's got the output path here. It's just doing it in the same directory as the project. And so there are, as you can see, 50 Word documents that have been outputted there. Just as a small note, you may find in contemporary versions of C#, you'll get this nullable issue or error. If you go to the project and just change this nullable to disable, that'll cause those sort of, they're really warnings more than anything else. It'll cause that to disappear. So here we're going to have a little look at one of these documents and see whether or not it worked. So to do that, we can open the folder. And so any given file here, you can actually just go reveal, right click on it and go reveal in File Explorer, and it'll open up the directory that it's in. So here we're going to open just one of these files, and it has first name, last name. We regret to inform you your application has been rejected. Great, and that's it. That means that functionally worked, and everything else that we can do from this point on that project is to make it better, so to speak. For example, say we wanted to put this all in one document. Let's go back to ChatGPT and see if we can ask it to create one docx file and start each letter on a new page. See what it does. May go through, update the code, and give it a go. So here it's explained the code at the end. It's creating a new page using the break class. We can copy this code to our project again and run that, see what happens. It's going to wear away. And we will now just try opening that output document to see what it looks like. And so it's got some blank pages at the start, and then it's got each of those dear first name, last name across many pages. So you can turn the paragraph marks on so you can see what you're doing. Almost certainly that'll have some blank data in the file. That's the reason why it's got blank things up there. But That's the sort of thing you'd have to go through and check. It's an iterative process. Functionally, though, we've just used the natural language model and ChatGPT to create Word documents and then change what we wanted. And this iterative process is really the amazing power of doing programming this way. Thanks for watching the video. As always, like and subscribe if you'd like me to build more content, and hopefully see you next time.